This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Christy Nance, and I am the Policy Director here at Oral Health Kansas. These are our Friday noon calls, so they are every other week throughout legislative session. And they're just an opportunity for us to kind of update you guys on what's going on in the legislature, provide a little bit of education, and really provide space for questions from you guys. On our last Friday noon call, I discussed the movement we were seeing around increased Medicaid dental rates in the 2020 budget. And to recap quickly, Oral Health Kansas has worked closely with the Kansas Dental Association this past year to advocate for increased reimbursement rates for dental providers enrolled in the KanCare network. A rate increase passed in both budget subcommittees, Senate Ways and Means, Subcommittee on Health, and the House Social Services Budget Committee. It then passed in both budget committees, Senate Ways and Means and House Appropriations. And from there, it was heard on the House and Senate floor, and it also passed there. So on this slide, you will see the language that came from each chamber. They're very different in their wording and amount of funding. So I just wanted to show kind of the difference. So in the House, they just appropriated a set amount of money for this increase, where the Senate kind of added language that would increase the rates to 50%. So following the passage on the House and Senate floor, the budget went into conference committee. And the conference committee is appointed by legislative leadership to resolve the differences in a bill. And it typically has 3 members from each chamber, the House and the Senate. And it's usually the chairperson, vice chairperson, and ranking minority member of the standing committee that originally considered the bill. So for example, for this concern, it was 3 members from Senate Ways and Means and 3 members from House Appropriations. So in conference committee, it ultimately was decided to pass an increase in dental reimbursement rates. And they went with the House version, which was add $3 million, including $1.3 million from the State General Fund, to increase Medicaid dental reimbursement rates for fiscal year 2020. We were really excited, and we're very grateful to the legislature for making oral health a priority this year. But there is definitely still more work to be done around rates. This increase is smaller than we were hoping for, and we're not sure the impact it will have on the provider network, and most likely won't be as great of an impact as we would have liked. But we are still very thankful and kind of excited just to see what happens with the provider network following this increase. So the next step, the budget will go back to the House and the Senate floor. The budget that the conference committee decided upon, it will go back to that for final approval in May. And I wanted to just briefly talk about why it was important that we work on increasing the reimbursement rates this year. The current reimbursement rates are around 40% of commercial insurance rates, and those rates have not been increased since 2001. So we had been hearing that dentists were actually kind of having to pay out of pocket to serve this population because those reimbursement rates were so low. And approximately 30% of dentists in the state currently accept Medicaid. And so as a consumer advocacy organization, we were regularly getting calls from Medicaid beneficiaries saying they couldn't find a dentist in their community that would accept Medicaid, and they were having to go to nearby communities to find that care. And so we really just kind of saw this gap in access to dentists or a dental provider, and reimbursement rates was one of the ways that we wanted to try to address it. The other legislative topic that I wanted to discuss today was Medicaid expansion. So I talked previously about how Representative Kathy Wolfmore had gutted House Bill 2066 on the House floor and replaced it with language to expand Medicaid. And that passed 69 to 54 in the House, and it's now in Senate Public Health and Welfare Committee. So just due to Senate leadership, we aren't seeing any movement on Medicaid expansion in the Senate. There was a press release from Governor Kelly this week where she was encouraging the Senate to pass the bill before they adjourn for their first adjournment today. And if the Senate committee doesn't work the bill or pass it to the floor, it would take 24 votes from the Senate to pull the measure to the debate calendar, or 27 votes to propel it to a full Senate vote. So these are just kind of some roundabout ways that we may see Medicaid expansion reach the floor in the Senate. We're not sure that we'll see any movement until May, since adjournment is today. So like I said, more than likely, if there's to be any movement, it's going to be in May when they return for veto session. And so it's a great idea to be contacting and connecting with your senator while they are on adjournment, which is April 6th through April 30th. And more than likely, they will be back in their home district and happy to listen to constituent concerns and kind of reconnect with their community. And so this is just a great opportunity for you to reach out and say, hey, I am in support of Medicaid expansion and would really like to see you vote yes on this. I did want to show you guys this website in case you weren't sure who your senator is. So this website is ksleglookup.org, and you just put in your address. So this is Oral Health Kansas office address right there. And then it'll pull up who your senator is. So you can find their phone, their email. So since they're going to be home, I would kind of recommend sending it to both of those emails. And if they do have a personal phone, also trying to give them contact there, because I'm not sure if anyone will be in the office while they're gone. So you can use that website to look up your senator. And then you can just keep it short and sweet when you contact them. Tell them your name, maybe your zip code, and that you're a constituent. It's really important to them that they're hearing from their constituents, because you guys have a lot bigger impact on them since you're the ones voting them into office and they want to get reelected. That you tell them you're a constituent, because they will listen a little more closely to your ask. So tell them that. Ask for their support of Medicaid expansion, and leave contact information in case they have questions. If you have a good story, or you know how Medicaid expansion would benefit your community, feel free to also share that. But if that seems a little intimidating, just asking for their support of Medicaid expansion is huge. So feel free to keep it short and sweet. I talked a little bit about this already. But today is drop dead day, so that is the last day that bills will be considered. They leave for first adjournment, which will go through April 30th, and then veto session will begin on May 1st. And they will be in veto session until they work through all of the bills and the budget that they need to get through. Sometimes this goes just through May, sometimes it goes into June. So we'll find out when they get back for veto session how long that will go. And then I just wanted to kind of walk you guys through the Kansas Legislature website. Because it is kind of confusing and there's a lot going on, and I just wanted to walk through some of the important things that, at least at Oral Health Kansas, that we utilize from this website. So one of the first things that I wanted to point out was that the House status and Senate status is always shown right up here in this corner. This shows, so right now the House is in session, they're on the floor. Senate is recessed until 1 p.m. So this way you can kind of see if you're interested in something that the House or Senate is going to be working on the floor, that you know when they might be going back into session. This document down here called 2019 Session Deadlines is also a great resource. So this shows all of the deadlines that the House and Senate have to stick to. So you can see on here, here is drop dead day. And then it also talks about veto session. And if you scroll down, it has an actual calendar, so you can kind of follow along, just so you know, like when they're not going to be in session, and there are other important dates. And then I also wanted to show where to find committees. Under committees, they will have the standing committees listed out. So for us, like Health and Human Services is a big one, Public Health and Welfare. With this reimbursement rate work, we've worked a lot with Ways and Means and House Appropriations. On this list, you can also see the joint committees. So for us, we keep up to date on the CanCare Oversight Committee, also known as the Robert Bethel Joint Committee on Home and Community-Based Services and CanCare Oversight. And then for budget, they have subcommittees like I talked about for reimbursement rates. And so we worked with the Social Services Subcommittee and the Health Subcommittee, and they will release these as they get closer to working the budget next year. So those aren't always on there. And then, so say you want to like follow what's happening in public health and welfare, you can go to the committee page and it'll show you who the leadership is. So the chair, vice chair, and ranking minority member are considered the leadership, and also who the other members are. And then another person to have a good relationship with is this committee assistant, and her office would be in Senator Solon-Tropp's office. So their office is usually in the chair's office. And so you can just look on here, you can see agendas. So you could check like each Monday or Friday and see what is happening in that committee that week. These are a little outdated just because the committees haven't met super regularly lately. And then for some of them, if there was like an important hearing or something that you missed, sometimes they will post the testimony on here. So you can go back and look at the meeting minutes, the meeting attendance, and then you can individually look at the testimony on here if that's of interest. And I did want to point out, because I did discuss conference committees, that they are also listed on the website. And so they were not on the initial page, but they are under the committees tab. And so you can click on conference committees. And then Senate Bill 25 was the one that we were particularly interested in with the budget. So these are leadership from Senate Ways and Means, and these three members are leadership from House Appropriations. So you can see who's on the committee, who you kind of need to be targeting your advocacy work towards, and then you can also see their schedule on here so that you know when they'll be meeting if you want to be there in attendance. And the final thing I wanted to point out was, oh, actually, I will just add quickly that if you're interested in like public health and welfare, they do also have their audio stream on that site as well. So they're not in session right now, but it would just pop up here and you could listen live to it. Okay, and the final thing, I just wanted to point out that you can look up certain bills. So House Bill 2066 is the Medicaid expansion bill. So you would just search for it in the search bar. And then this keeps track of everything that's happened with this bill. So you can go in and see different amendments that were proposed, maybe added or rejected. You can see what those are. You can see what the votes were. You can see where it's at. And then you can also up here look at the whole bill and just kind of keep track if there are certain bills that are of interest to you. And then the final thing that I wanted to talk about today, I just wanted to point out that if you are unable to be on past calls, that these calls are on our website now, the recordings are. So if you go to oralhealthkansas.org, under advocacy, there are advocacy update calls. And then all of the calls are down here at the bottom. So this one will be uploaded probably early next week if there is someone that you would like to share this information with. That is all I have today. Do we have any questions either pertaining to what I've already talked about or just other questions, maybe things you'd like to hear on future calls? You can either put it in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. I appreciate you all joining today, and our next call will be in 2 weeks. I won't have any legislative updates, but hopefully I will have an educational piece for everyone. So I hope you all have a great weekend and happy Friday.